Hello and welcome to another Diecast Resto's Diecast Restoration. I'm Jason and this week I've made life difficult for myself with this 53C Ford Zodiac Mk. More on why a little later. This casting has been repainted by a former owner, as they would usually have appeared in a light metallic blue verging on green. They haven't done a terrible job considering it hasn't been disassembled. Here then is the shade I am aiming for on my restoration, and this is the real article. Now here is why I've given myself a needless task today. That pains me to watch so much. Here's the damage, a ruined wheel and some buckled bodywork. It's really bent that entire corner completely out of shape. Nevertheless, the show must go on, so I'll carry on dismantling the Zodiac. Inside you can see the suspension piece attached to the interior and the engine bay piece complete with a spare tyre which handily is usable. I had a cunning plan, to fit the spare in place of my flat tyre and repurpose my damaged wheel as the new spare, checking that the damaged section would be concealed. There isn't a huge chunk that has been lost to my drill bit, so I'm going to give it a whirl. The casting came out in 1968 and lasted until 1972, when it was replaced by the generic Tanzara. It was converted to the Matchbox Superfast series for 1970, where it was recoloured metallic green. Despite the switch to the Superfast style 5-spoke wheels, the 11mm black plastic wheel remained as the spare under the bonnet. Some rare and valuable Zodiacs were created when the regular wheels casting received the metallic green body and vice versa. Additionally, some violet coloured interiors are known to exist, though these are likely to be pre-production examples. I've reattached the base to the body to straighten out that mess that I've created. I gently hammer down that corner from various angles, desperate to repent. When I'm happy with the result, I'm ready to strip that blue paint and the paint from the base. This was by no means the first Zodiac in the Matchbox range. The 33A Zodiac entered the range in 1957. It was joined by the 39A convertible version later the same year. Both of these I've restored relatively recently, and both were based on the Ford Zephyr Mk. Zodiac was the luxury nameplate of the Zephyr model. Then, long ago, I restored the 1963 33B Zephyr 6 Mark III. And now I round out Lesney's Zephyr Zodiac efforts with this, the Mark IV. The Mark IV was a complete redesign on the Zephyr platform and was released in 1966. The car utilised Ford of Britain's new V4 and V6 engines, with 2 and 2.5 litre units respectively. With the spare wheel placed up top in front of the engine, by British standards it was a very large car. It was comparable to the US Ford Fairlane, by then a mid-size car in the States. It was a nose-heavy machine, and with its traditional cross-ply tyres fitted, had a very loose rear end. The Zodiac models benefited from power steering to mitigate this. Zephyrs were far from luxurious, with vinyl bench seats fitted as standard. The Zodiac benefited from the 140 brake horsepower V6 Essex engine. It also had an adjustable steering column, 2-speed windscreen wipers with electric washers, a heater, a clock, and reversing lights as standard. All the luxury. However, after less than a year on sale, Ford announced cutbacks in Zodiac production following poor sales. It was priced higher than the previous big Fords it replaced, and much higher than the Zephyr version. An executive badged Zodiac came with an automatic gearbox, and a sunroof and power steering were standard features. Not only did it have a desirable executive badge, but it also came with walnut fascias, a full complement of instruments, fully carpeted, reclining front seats, fog and reversing lights, inertia reel seatbelts and a radio. This Zephyr Zodiac was the last to be independently designed by Ford of Britain, with the subsidiary now working closer with the German division. The colour rattle can I have chosen to loosely match the shade the casting originally came in is this Tamiya TS58 Pearl Light Blue. The Zephyr and Zodiac were killed off in 1972 to make way for the unified European Ford Granada. The Zephyr had been around since 1951, and the upmarket Zodiac since 1954. They had been assembled across the globe, from Australia and New Zealand to Rhodesia and South Africa, Ireland to the Dagenham plant in London. Anyway, now I'm approaching the end of this build, applying the chrome to the axle ends. The windows receive a final polishing after I gently sanded them down with wet and dry paper earlier. The window piece was very tarnished, so I'll be replacing it with my next parts order I think, just for my own satisfaction. Now here are my individual pieces to put back together. First of all, the window piece is fitted. Next I will collect my plastic engine that was in remarkably good condition and place it inside the engine bay, complete with the revitalised yet flat spare. The interior and suspension go over the top, and on top of all of that, my mirror shine polished base. The tongue secures it at the front, and a screw is fitted at the back. So this is how my Ford Zodiac Mark IV appeared originally, in its repainted blue coat, featuring a touch of overpaint on the wheels. It had that cloudy windscreen obscuring vision, but the worst of its problems were something, or someone else. Me. Yes, I made a cock-up drilling out that rear rivet post. See the 59-second mark for that if you missed it. I've tried to resurrect it as best I could, and here's how it now appears. I really love this shade. It's possibly a touch too blue than the original paint Lesney used, but it totally suits the vehicle. The front end glistens now, newly polished all over as it was connected to the base. This back corner is where I made my literal slip up earlier on. It isn't quite flush unfortunately, but it is as close as I could get it. I don't think I could have done much more without breaking it, and it wasn't a sacrifice worth making. Under the bonnet you'll find my old damaged wheel, which you can see at the closing credits. Now I'd just like to say thanks to my channel supporters who help out with the costs via YouTube memberships and Patreon. Visit the links in the description to join them. Please like and subscribe, and I will see you again for the next one. Bye for now.